Hello, I'm Romain Morel, tech specialist in the OVHcloud Startup Program. Today, having a little talk with Pierre Gonlier about cloud solutions. Hi Pierre, can you introduce yourself?
Hi Romain. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Pierre Gonlier and I'm a solution architect at OVHcloud.
Thank you, Pierre. We support a lot of customers in the startup program. Their plans are all different. But the first question we are asked is always the same. How to kickstart my cloud journey? We're going to try to answer that question. But first of all, Pierre, can you explain what the cloud is?
Sure. So the idea of the cloud is to efficiently add scalability and resilience on top of hardware and computational network and storage resources.
Now that you've defined what the cloud is, could you show us how to just start?
As I said earlier, cloud is mainly about resiliency and scalability. We are going to show you a simple way on how to decorrelate the computational part, creating a virtual machine, and the storage part, using a block storage. The first part is to create the virtual machine. Here on the UX Manager, you will be able to select among the various flavors of virtual machine, mainly dedicated to either general purposes, computational power, RAM, or high efficiency IOPS. The second step will be to select the area where you want the VM to be deployed. Then you will be able to select among a wide range of operating system or pre-installed application. In our case, we are going to pick Docker. The next step and final one will be to give a name to your VM, here migrate VM, and click on next. You will also have the opportunity to create automatic backup. The second part will be to create a block storage. Block is where you will be able to store in a resilient way your data. Go on block storage, select the same area where you have deployed your previous virtual machine. You have two options, either standard or high performance class of storage. Since I have a lot of data, let's create a 100 gigabyte volume and set a name here, which I call my data. Now I have two items in my public cloud project, a virtual machine and a block storage. The last step will be to attach my block storage to my virtual machine. Once the block storage is attached to my virtual machine, the final step will be to connect to my virtual machine and do the first initialization steps. The initial step will be to, first of all, add yourself to the Docker group if you like to run Docker. Here you can see that on the virtual machine you have two blocks attached, SDA and SDB. First step is to create a folder where to mount your block storage. The second one will be to format and create an initial partition on the external attached block storage. Once the partition is created, you will have to format it, for example, extended 4, and mount it. You're done.
So, is block storage the only way to store your data?
So that's a fair question. At OVH, we have different types of resources, and when you will start your journey in the cloud, you will have to consider three types of resources: the computational part, the network part, and the storage part. In terms of computational power, you saw earlier that you have different types of virtual machine flavor: CPU, RAM, GPU, IOPS. Each of those types of flavor will be dedicated to one use case. On the right side, you have different types of storage. We saw earlier block storage that I represent here, but you also have access to object storage. And finally, regular database as we used to have them, and we still use them. And the next step is to connect resources on the left to resources on the right.
So now we have been able to create a basic infrastructure through the OVHcloud Manager, but is it possible to automate it to lower my operation costs?
Sure. To automate all this infrastructure, mainly compute, network, and storage, and all those different types of resources, OVHcloud will expose a set of API, and you can use those API through any software that is OpenStack compatible, such as Terraform, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, and so on. Using those API and tools, you will be able to automate something very important in the lifecycle of your product and solution called CI/CD, Continuous Integration, Continuous Delivery. That's one of the key factors that will enable you to have releases and testing before you reach out to your customer.
Okay, but what's the risk of not doing that?
As I said earlier, cloud is mainly about adding resiliency and scalability on top of hardware. It means that part of this resiliency will be brought into the system through software. Automation is one way to add resiliency and to make sure that your product is always up to date and live.
Okay, what other benefits would bring automation?
Another aspect of automation is that you will start to do infra as code. You will be able to do batch processing and run multiple workloads in parallel. One good use case for doing so is to use CPU instantive flavor with a high-speed, low-latency network and object storage.
Okay, we talk a lot about building the infrastructure, but let's say you're already hosted at another cloud provider. How would you migrate my infrastructure and my data to OVHcloud?
You have several ways of considering migration. The most two common way are lift and shift, where you take the actual architecture and you just lift and place it somewhere else. And also the second type is refactoring. For the lift and shift migration, OVHcloud is providing the basics building block for using and running your workload. If you like to refactor your architecture, you will be able also to use manage OVHcloud application and services. For example, to monitor and to observe the metric of your system, OVHcloud have data platform services such as logs and metrics.
Okay, and will I find the same technological bricks as my previous cloud provider?
This is a tricky question because it depends entirely on what were you doing before OVHcloud. At OVHcloud, we are using various technology and we always open the API of the underlying product. So if you are using a standard from the market somewhere else, you will be able to use the same standard at OVHcloud. If you are using a closed solution outside of OVHcloud, you will most probably be able to use an equivalent solution at OVHcloud.
Thank you, Pierre. I think now we know enough to kickstart our cloud journey at OVHcloud. So now, let's discuss during the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Romain. And I hope this session helped you to demystify a bit the cloud. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Pierre.